It was 3:14 a.m. when I first heard the muffled laughter. Two voices, one unmistakably hers, and the other his. A man's. I sat up in bed, heart punching my ribs like it wanted out. The guest room door was closed, same as it had been since Claire said her old college friend needed a night to regroup. His name was Jordan, apparently. Just a friend, she told me. It's only for tonight, she promised. He's got a red eye in the morning. But that was 3 nights ago. And he was still here. The thing is, I wanted to believe her. I really did. Claire had never given me a real reason not to. She was smart, warm, and wickedly funny. She could talk her way out of a traffic ticket or into a Michelin star restaurant. She made life feel electric. But lately, things had been static. Her smiles were shorter. Her phone never left her hand. And her eyes, when they met mine, were never fully present. Like she was listening to someone else in her head. I first noticed it 2 months back. A subtle shift. We stopped eating dinner at the table. She stopped asking about my day. Intimacy, both physical and emotional, trickled down to polite routines. I chalked it up to stress. Work, maybe. Her mom had been in and out of the hospital. I wanted to give her space. I didn't want to be that guy, the suspicious husband who checked her phone or interrogated her every move. But when she said Jordan would be crashing, my stomach turned. Something didn't sit right. He arrived on a Wednesday evening. I remember it vividly because Claire was too well dressed for a simple reunion with a friend. Hair done, heels on, perfume I hadn't smelled in weeks. They came in laughing, that kind of private, familiar laughter that didn't match the version of just friends she described. He was polite, sure. Firm handshake. Told me he worked in digital marketing and was in town for meetings. But his eyes, they lingered too long on Claire. And hers lingered right back. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling as I listened to their voices murmur and laugh down the hall. It didn't sound like two people catching up. It sounded like a rhythm they already knew, like an inside joke that excluded me. Around midnight, I got up for water and caught the tail end of their conversation through the cracked guest room door. Claire's voice was low, intimate. "You should have come sooner," she said. I didn't hear his reply. I didn't need to. The next morning, I pretended everything was fine. Poured coffee. Asked if Jordan slept well. He smiled and said like a rock. Claire kissed me on the cheek, barely brushing skin. "You're up early," she said, as if that were the strangest part of the day. I nodded, hiding the scream in my throat. Later, while they went out for brunch, just to catch up, she said, I installed the cameras. Tiny ones. Discreet. One in the living room, one facing the hallway, and one angled toward the guest room door. I told myself it was just for clarity. Closure, maybe. Not because I expected betrayal, but because I needed the truth to have a face. I needed to stop guessing whether I was paranoid or perceptive. For 2 days, nothing happened. Or nothing obvious. Anyway, Jordan left the house during the day, came back before dark. Claire cooked dinner once, ordered takeout the next. They watched a movie in the living room, sitting too close, I thought. But there was no physical contact. No kiss. No smoking gun. Until night 3. That night, Claire came to bed late. I pretended to be asleep, breathing slow and steady while her silhouette crept across the room. She didn't touch me, just slipped under the covers and faced the opposite wall. At 3:14 a.m., I woke to that laughter again. Too familiar. Too quiet. I crept out of bed, phone in hand, and pulled up the feed. The living room was empty. Hallway still. Then, movement. The guest room door opened. Claire. Hair tied up. Oversized t-shirt, not hers. She tiptoed inside, closing the door behind her. Then silence. My hands were shaking. I told myself maybe she was just checking on him. Maybe he needed water. Maybe he had a nightmare. But my chest knew better. My chest knew what it feels like when trust dies in real time. The video didn't show what happened in the room. The camera didn't reach that far. But the door stayed closed for nearly 2 hours. When it opened again, she came out alone, barefoot, and walked back to our room like nothing happened. I didn't sleep. The next morning, she acted normal. She kissed me, full-lipped this time. Asked if I wanted pancakes. She looked relieved. Relaxed. Free, almost. Jordan left later that afternoon. Flight finally got rescheduled, she said with a shrug. No hugs, no goodbye photo, no ceremony. Just a quiet exit and a car that disappeared down the street. That night, I didn't bring it up. I didn't ask her what really happened behind that door. I didn't want her story. I already had the truth. And the truth doesn't need permission to exist. So I waited. Waited until she went to sleep. Waited until the moonlight cast long shadows across the floor. Waited until the ache in my chest settled into something colder, quieter, like resolve. I got up, pulled a duffel from the closet, packed only what I needed: passport, cash, laptop. No notes. No confrontation. Just silence. I walked out at 2:17 a.m., the same hour she'd walked into that room 3 nights ago. Not a word. Not a door slam. Just vanished. But the real story, the one she'll never see coming, is what happened after I left. I didn't drive to a hotel. I didn't crash at a friend's. I didn't call my parents, or post vague quotes online, or sit crying in my car like some tragic husband in a Hallmark movie. I disappeared. Fully. Completely. That night, I drove 4 hours north to a lakeside cabin I used to rent during college breaks. No one knew about it. Not Claire, not even my closest friends. It had no Wi-Fi, no cameras, just a creaky bed, a gas heater, and the kind of silence that forces you to hear every thought you've spent years burying. I remember standing by the window as dawn stretched across the sky, my reflection barely visible in the glass. I didn't feel anger. Not exactly. I felt weight. Like the weight of a life I thought we'd built. All of it now a house of cards crumbling in slow motion. Claire had crossed a line, sure, but it wasn't the sex that broke me. It was the casualness, the routine, the way she smiled the next morning and made pancakes like nothing happened. Like I didn't matter. Like I was an extra in the movie of her life. 3 days passed before I turned my phone back on. I'd expected a flurry of texts, missed calls, voicemails. I got 2. One from Claire. Hey, I noticed your stuff is gone. Can you call me when you see this? And one 2 days later. This isn't funny anymore. Where are you? That was it. No panic. No search party. No heartfelt apology. Just inconvenience. As if my absence was more annoying than alarming. I sat with that for a while. Let it sink in. Then I opened the app tied to the cameras. Yes, I left them running. Call it paranoia. Call it strategy. I had a hunch that Jordan's exit wasn't the end of the story. That maybe my vanishing would stir something real in her. That she'd confess. Cry. Try to reach me through the one place she couldn't fake: solitude. What I saw instead changed everything. First, she searched the house. Methodically. Bedroom, closet, bathroom. Like she was making sure I hadn't left behind anything incriminating. She even opened the laundry hamper and sorted through my clothes. Then she sat at the dining table for a long time, just staring at her phone. She wasn't crying. She was calculating. I know that look. I've seen it before, back when she was pitching investors for her nonprofit, spinning every story just right. Claire wasn't grieving. She was strategizing. That night, she brought someone over. Not Jordan. Someone new. A man I didn't recognize. Younger. Flashier. Confident in that practiced, performative way. She opened the door for him, wearing the same robe she used to reserve for our anniversaries. They laughed. Poured wine. Moved fast. I turned off the feed. Not because I couldn't watch, but because I didn't need to. The story was already clear. Claire hadn't made a mistake. She wasn't confused, or lost, or caught in a moment of weakness. She had changed. And somewhere along the way, I'd become a placeholder. A man she could point to when convenient and hide when inconvenient. I wasn't her partner. I was her alibi. So I stopped thinking like a husband. I started thinking like a ghost. Over the next week, I took apart the life we built, piece by piece. Quietly, legally, thoroughly. First, the finances. She never handled the money, not really. I managed the joint accounts, the savings, the investment portfolios. I moved slowly, carefully, transferring assets into a trust under my name alone. Froze the credit cards. Canceled the shared insurance. I left just enough to keep the utilities running. Enough that she wouldn't notice right away. Second, the records. I downloaded the camera footage. Not for revenge, but for clarity. Just in case I ever doubted my choice. I wanted a record of the truth, raw and unfiltered. I stored it in an encrypted drive and made backups in places even Claire, with all her charm and social reach, could never touch. Third, the escape plan. I cashed out a portion of my brokerage account, converted it into crypto, then liquidated it across 3 cities. Rented a second apartment under a pseudonym. Booked an international flight on a date she wouldn't suspect. I wasn't running away. I was removing myself from a sinking ship before she could drag me down with it. All the while, Claire kept texting. Not frequently, not desperately, just periodically, like she was checking in on a project she'd delegated. Can we talk? I'm starting to get worried. If this is about Jordan, it wasn't what you think. That last one made me laugh. What I think? No, it was worse than I thought. 10 days after I vanished, she sent the longest message yet. I don't know what you're doing, but if you think ghosting me is going to solve anything, you're wrong. I made a mistake, okay? But we can still fix this. We've been through worse. Call me. I didn't respond. Instead, I mailed her the first envelope. Inside, a copy of the property title, now solely under my name. A list of the accounts we no longer shared. A letter. Short. Direct. You didn't just break my heart. You broke the truth. I'm not angry. I'm awake now. Please don't contact me again. No signature. She called 12 times after that. I didn't pick up. Because this wasn't about winning. It wasn't about revenge or theatrics or even closure. This was about reclaiming something far more precious than any marriage. Myself. 3 months passed. No texts. No emails. Just silence. The kind that used to feel like loneliness, but now felt like freedom. I didn't return to the house. I didn't cancel the lease either. Let her sit in the shell we once called home, surrounded by the ghosts of what she destroyed. I watched from a distance, not out of spite, but out of curiosity. When someone shows you who they are in the dark, you wonder what they'll do when the lights finally come on. Turns out, Claire didn't pivot. She spiraled. Within weeks, she posted a long, vague caption on social media about betrayal and abandonment, painting herself as the wronged one. Friends I hadn't heard from in years messaged me awkwardly, trying to figure out what had happened. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because here's the thing. The more I stayed silent, the more her story unraveled. People started noticing the inconsistencies, the timeline, the sudden shift in her behavior. Mutual friends began asking questions. Her charm, once magnetic, started to feel performative, forced. Then came the second guest. A different man. New face. Same script. He didn't last long. 2 weeks, maybe. Then another. And another. Like placeholders in a role she didn't know how to live without. She wasn't rebuilding. She was masking a collapse with temporary comforts. What I didn't expect was the message from Jordan. It arrived 6 months after I vanished. An email with the subject line, "I think I owe you the truth." He didn't grovel. He didn't make excuses. Just told me he didn't know she was married the first time they reconnected. That Claire called me her roommate for weeks. That by the time he found out, he was already involved and ashamed. He admitted she'd done the same to another guy before him. That I wasn't the first. Maybe not even the worst. I didn't reply. What was there to say? I didn't need his apology. I didn't need closure from the man she shared my bed with. I'd already made peace with the most important truth. She didn't cheat because of him. She cheated because she could. And because I made it easy. That was the hardest part to swallow, my own complicity. Not in the betrayal, but in the blind devotion. In the way I ignored the signs, softened the edges of red flags, explained away every distant glance and absent touch. I wanted to believe in us so badly that I stopped believing in myself. But solitude has a way of making you remember things, like how capable you used to feel before love turned you into a caretaker for someone else's emptiness. I rebuilt slowly. New city, new name. I went back to writing, essays mostly, reflections on relationships, trust, silence. I wrote under a pseudonym, never revealing the full story, but always rooted in truth. The essays caught on. A modest audience. People who'd been betrayed. People who'd betrayed. People looking for meaning in the wreckage. One message, in particular, stuck with me. A woman wrote, "Your words helped me leave a man I was lying to. Not because I got caught, because I finally saw what I'd become." And I sat there for a long time after reading that. Not out of pride, but out of relief. Because for the first time in over a year, I realized something. This wasn't the story of how I got betrayed. This was the story of how I found myself. Not in the wreckage, but in the quiet walk away from it. I don't check the camera feeds anymore. I disabled them a year after leaving. The house sold shortly after that. She moved, I heard. Tried to relaunch her old nonprofit. It didn't go far. Reputation follows people louder than love ever does. Sometimes I still see her face in dreams. Not the Claire I knew at the end. Tired, scheming, hollow-eyed. But the Claire I first fell for. Bright. Curious. leaning over coffee in the winter sunlight, asking me what I was most afraid of. My answer then had been, losing you. Today, it's different. Now, my biggest fear is losing myself again, ignoring my gut, shrinking to make someone else comfortable, mistaking comfort for connection. I don't date much these days. Not because I'm jaded. I just value peace more than partnership now. I know what it costs to let someone into the deepest parts of you. That door isn't closed, just guarded. Not with suspicion, but with reverence. If you've ever been betrayed, let me say this. You're not stupid for loving someone who lied to you. You're not weak for missing them. But you are free. And freedom, real freedom, is loving yourself enough to leave the table when respect is no longer being served. That's what I did. Not out of vengeance. Out of love. For the man I used to be, and the one I'm still becoming.